there. In this recipe, we're going to be making a fresh Caesar salad dressing or vinaigrette to go on a Caesar salad, which you could easily serve with pizza, which I've made in another video. This is an excellent recipe. It's a creamy salad dressing, and you can put it on either romaine or kale. And it has a lot of different ingredients in it. I think a lot of people don't realize how many ingredients go into Caesar salad dressing because they typically buy it already bottled in either the aisle or in the section where your fresh produce is. But typically in a Caesar salad dressing, especially a creamy one, you have a mayonnaise base. So I have 1 cup of mayonnaise here. Then you have fresh squeezed lemon juice, which we're going to be using. You have 2 cloves of crushed garlic. You have 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. You have 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. You have half of a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Now this is freshly grated. You can use whatever you have on hand. It could be the stuff like the Kraft type stuff, but really this stuff is the best. You can see this is Parmigiano Reggiano. This stuff comes from Costco. I just use the fine side of my cheese grater. You could use a rasp or a zester, either or, but you want a nice half cup of grated parm. Then you have here your salt. So you need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Even though the Worcester is already salty and the mayonnaise is already salty, you need that extra salt to bring things together. And finally, I have fresh cracked pepper. It's a half of a teaspoon of fresh cracked pepper that I've used my pepper grinder for. And obviously this is to taste. If you like it more peppery, you could put more pepper in the end. I also have a couple of tools here. So I have a small bowl. This time I'm using a glass bowl. I have a small whisk, a mini whisk, which will fit nicely in my bowl. And I have a small silicone spatula, which I'm going to be using to scrape my mayonnaise out of the container. And then I have a 1 tablespoon measure to measure out my lemon juice, because I had just squeezed an entire lemon into the little ramekin over here to be able to use. Okay? So in the first step, I'm going to take my crushed garlic. So this is 2 cloves of crushed garlic, and I'm going to place that into my bowl. And then I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of my freshly squeezed lemon juice. That one was a little shy, so it's a smidge more. And I'm going to take my Dijon mustard, which I'm going to scrape in here. And last, I'm going to take my Worcester, okay? So I'm going to put all those ingredients in. And then I'm going to whisk that up. So I'm going to whisk it until it's well combined and it appears like most of the mustard has dissolved in my lemon juice. Okay? Once I've done that, I'm going to place my whisk aside and I'm going to take my cup of mayonnaise that I've pre-measured, okay? And I'm going to put that into my bowl. Since the mayonnaise is the base of this vinaigrette, it's really important that your measurement is accurate, okay? Now you can use whatever mayonnaise you have on hand. It could be, you know, light mayonnaise. If you have that, it's totally fine. Obviously, I prefer to use the real stuff because it's tastier. I'm going to start whisking this together. We're going to be careful that we don't get it outside the bowl. Okay? And once a little bit of the lemon juice has been incorporated in, then I'm going to add my Parmesan cheese. So you can see it's quite a thick dressing, and that's totally fine because it is a creamy dressing, okay? Now I had a little bit more than half of a cup measured out, so I'll just reserve the remaining portion for when I dress my salad. Then I'm going to season my dressing. So I have my salt here. It's about 1/4 teaspoon total. And then I have my freshly cracked pepper, okay, that I've ground into here, and that's 1/2 teaspoon. And again, this is to taste. At the end, when we're done making our dressing, we can taste for seasoning, and if we note that it's lacking salt or you like it a little bit pepperier, then you can go ahead and add that in. Your cloves of garlic, you want to make sure that they're medium-sized cloves. It says that there's 2 cloves. My cloves of garlic were very large, so I actually went and I put just one extremely large clove of garlic in there because my garlic is extremely potent. Now I'm just going to test this for seasoning. It's really well balanced. It has a nice Parmesan flavor. You get that cracked black pepper, and the lemon juice is nice and fresh. Now I like mine a little bit more zippy, so I'm going to add the remaining lemon juice. There wasn't very much left. That was a whole lemon. And that generated about 2.5 tablespoons total of fresh juice. If you don't have fresh juice on hand, you can just use the bottled stuff and that would be totally fine as well. So you can see that it's nice and creamy, it's viscous, we can manipulate it enough, and it's going to be perfect for dressing any type of Caesar salad. Like I said, it could be kale, it could be Caesar, it could be whatever it is you have on hand. I've already prepared my salad dressing, and now I'm going to go ahead and prepare my croutons. So in this plastic bag here, I have a whole bunch of little cubes of baguette that was stale. So it was a baguette that I had used for another meal, and I had a little nubbin that was left, and I just went ahead and I diced that up. And when you have this, you can go ahead and throw it in your freezer, and then when you're ready, you can use it to make croutons. These make really delicious croutons because they're very tender and they have a nice crust. So I have a pan on the element here. I heated it to medium-high temperature, and now I've turned it down to medium. I have a nice amount of oil in the bottom of my pan, something like avocado oil, olive oil, whatever you have on hand. And now I'm just going to put my croutons into the oil, and I'm going to sort of allow them to toast in the oil. And you want to get them some good color. You want them to be sort of golden brown all over. And then when they're fully ready, we're going to season them with a little bit of salt and a little bit of garlic powder. It's totally up to you what flavorings you use on your croutons. Since this is a Caesar salad and the Caesar salad is garlicky, I like to put a little bit of garlic powder on at the end. Now you can definitely use store-bought croutons. I mean, I always have store-bought croutons on hand at home because my kids love store-bought croutons and soup or just to snack on, to be honest. But this is a great way to use up little crusts of bread that you might have left over in your freezer or left over on your countertop. You can even use just like sliced bread. If you have a bunch of sliced bread that's kind of been hanging around on your countertop for a while, you just slice it up into nice sized cubes, and you want to toast it up in a pan, and it's sort of like a way to refresh things, okay? I'm just going to put on my hood fan for a second because I have something in the oven right now and I don't want to set off my smoke detectors at the same time. So as my croutons are starting to cook and get a little bit of color, I'm going to take my salt grinder here and I'm going to grind a generous amount of salt over top of my croutons because I want to season them thoroughly. And your goal is not to get your croutons rock hard like the restaurant or store-bought variety, especially when it's a baguette that has a thick crust like this. You want to kind of just get enough color on them and crisp them up, but not necessarily break your teeth because the crust on this is pretty solid anyways. And these are starting to look really great. If you look at them, like this guy here, he's got a lot of nice color on them. Pretty much all of them have a good amount of color. So when you're satisfied with the color that your baguette has on it, you can just turn it off, and then right before we go ahead and put it in our bowl and set it aside, I'm just going to take my garlic powder here and I'm going to kind of give a shake all over and toss them up. And when I do that, I'm doing it at the end because I don't want them to get burnt. So garlic has a tendency to burn very, very easily. And this way I have beautiful crispy croutons with lots of color on them that are delicious and ready to go with my salad. So I'm assembling my Caesar salad now, and I've chosen to use kale. So I've already washed my head of kale. I've spun it dry with my salad spinner over there. And I've torn it up and put it into a bowl. You can definitely use romaine as previously stated, but I have kale that I need to use up, so this is what I'm going to use. Down in front of me I have my Caesar dressing that I made earlier. my delicious garlic croutons, and I have some bacon here, which is totally optional, and some fresh grated Parmesan cheese just to finish it off. So I also have a pair of tongs here ready to toss my kale. You want to make sure that when you're dressing it with enough so that your leaves are well coated, but not so much that your salad ends up soggy. Just because I made this much dressing doesn't necessarily mean that I need to use all of it up. Kale has a tendency to use more dressing than romaine, so I will warn you about that. You could also serve your Caesar salad with fresh wedges of lemon, just to give it a little bit more zing. But these are my kids that I'm making this salad for, so I'm just going to keep it plain and simple. Okay, so I want to make sure, again, like I said, that all of my leaves are well coated, and kale has a tendency to be tougher than romaine does. So like, you might want to just put a little extra tablespoon of dressing than you normally would. Now this keeps really well long term, the Caesar salad dressing in the refrigerator, just in a Tupperware. And kale Caesar has a tendency to keep for a few days in the fridge. So normally you can't really keep salad long term, like a romaine Caesar salad won't stay long term, but because kale is a little bit hardier than romaine is, it actually does last. So okay, so I have mixed up my romaine or my kale here, and you can see that there's a nice even distribution of dressing all over my leaves. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put my croutons on top, and then I'm going to take some of my bacon and put that in here, and I'm going to retoss that. Just making sure that we mix everything up and make sure that all my toppings don't go to the bottom of the bowl the way that things have a tendency to do. And my last step is to take my grated Parmesan cheese and just to sprinkle it over top. And this gives a little bit extra cheesiness. Now this is again totally optional, you don't need to do that. And I'm just gonna toss that at the end. And I have my pizza that I made to accompany my Caesar salad, and this is my son's plate here, and he loves Caesar salad, so I'm gonna put a nice amount of salad on here with some nice bacon bits and a few extra croutons, and boy does that look good. Who wouldn't like a nice homemade pizza and Caesar salad? Delicious, crispy, refreshing.